Socialism. Let's be afraid of it. But why be afraid of it? Other than the fact that Republicans tell you you should be afraid of it. Because they have associated it with dictators or authoritarianism. Let's take a look. Okay. Socialism is not inherently bad. It's not inherently part of an authoritarian or dictatorship. Capitalism is not inherently good, and it is not strictly associated with democracy or a republic. A democratic republic is a system of governance, meaning a system that's put together to govern the people. Okay? In a democratic republic, the people vote into place fairly and in free fashion without a poll tax, without having to pay for it, a democratic leader or a leader chose by the people. Okay? A banana republic, however, makes you think the people are choosing the leader, but in fact, the leader has either chosen who will be his opponent, or he has eliminated his opponents through means of imprisonment or death. Okay? And a authoritarianism or a dictatorship, the leader just chooses who the leader is, and he benefits only. Okay? So there's your differences there. Socialism and capitalism, or a social capitalistic nation, is a form of economic system. Now, there are countries out there who have tried to be strictly capitalistic. There are ones that have tried to be strictly socialism, which in most cases, in that case, both have failed. And then there are countries that are socialistic capitalisms. Okay? Now, Russia used to be a socialistic dictatorship, meaning that the leader of Russia benefited most from that socialistic program. And he determined who under him would benefit from that program. Russia is now a switch between a banana republic and a dictatorship. Okay? That is capitalism. There is capitalism in Russia, but Putin has blackmailed the capitalistic companies in Russia, which started out to be, I think, like 12 organizations. He blackmailed them by putting one of the oligarchs in a cage, so the rest didn't want to go in a cage. So they said, what can we do to not go in a cage? And Putin says 50%. So he owns 50% of all those capitalistic companies. He benefits from that. Any opponent, he holds elections, but his opponent is either handpicked by him because of the constitutional laws that determine how long he can hold office and how long he has to be held out of office before he can go in and be elected again. Or he imprisons or murders his opponents. So in that sense, he is a banana republic because he makes it seem like there is a democratic system in place in which everybody gets to vote the leader into power, but in truth, they don't. Okay? Not like in America. We have a system put in place that the people get to vote for their leader. Now, do our people get to put our leader in place? No, the majority of people vote for the electors who will go to the White House and then are supposed to vote for who the majority of their state voted for. But on occasion, they go against that, like with Bush and with Trump. The majority of the nation voted for Hillary Clinton, but the Electoral College voted for Trump. Okay? Which is why most of us complain about the Electoral College, because it is an unfair system. It allows the few to steal or rob the votes of the many. And that's not right. It also allows for the gerrymandering that's going on. If it wasn't for the Electoral College, gerrymandering would not have the success it has. It would be one person, one vote, and whatever candidate got the most of the popular vote is the candidate who would win. Period. But we don't have a system like that. But our system still isn't totally a banana republic. Now, socialism is a system of governance where the government brings in the taxes and they decide how those taxes will be distributed to either benefit all the citizens in the nation or to benefit the leadership of the nation, giving the least amount to the lower class and making it harder for the lower class to get ahead. The same thing with capitalism. The leadership determines who has most of the power in capitalism, making it harder for the lower class to succeed. Now, in democratic systems, if we have a political party in place who would like to go more towards the autocratic system, if what that country is looking at doing has more socialist programs to them, that party will work to make you afraid of those socialist programs. So you won't vote for the politicians who are want to help implement them. Okay? Now, if our system was more socialist, then the opposing party who wants to go more towards the authoritarianism would make you afraid of capitalism. Because that fear controls you. Now, a socialist program is a program where the country takes in the taxes. They use those taxes to benefit society, their nation, the people in the nation, whether they be the poorest of the poor or the richest of the rich. It's meant to benefit them all. Okay? In a dictatorship, it benefits the rich, and the poor gets the breadline. In a democratic country, it benefits everybody. Whether you're poor, disabled, or elderly, everybody has a home. Everybody is able to go to school and benefit from learning. Everybody has medical. Everybody gets, these different programs that help the people. They have to pay higher taxes, but they don't have to pay out so much in things like medical costs that end up bankrupting a lot of families. Sure, a young person may not have many medical costs, and they may think that's unfair. But once they get up into their 50s and 60s, or if they get cancer, they're going to find that's a very fair system. That no matter what happens to them, no matter how little of an income they have, they are assured they're given medical treatment no matter what. Okay? And that's a socialist program. Okay? And that program goes to everybody, no matter how rich they are, how poor they are. Does not matter. Now, Sweden is socialist, mostly. It's a very large socialist country. Canada has socialism. Now we're going to give you a shocker. America has socialism. Part of their country, of our country, already. Oh, how could that be? Well, let's see. We have politicians' paychecks. They're paid out of our taxes. That's the socialist program. Public buildings that are paid for, the upkeep, and them being open out of our taxes. Those public buildings are courthouses, welfare buildings, social security buildings, police departments, fire departments, school buildings, national monuments, national parks, state monuments. All of these are part of socialist programs, including embassies throughout the world. That's part of socialist program. That's part of what our taxes pay for. Police departments, as I already said. Subsidies for oil companies to keep our gas prices low. Subsidies for farmers. Food stamps. Welfare. The WIC program. Tax deductions. Tax credits. All of that is part of socialist programs and paid for out of our taxes. Medicaid, Medicare. Now, Social Security, being the word social in it, you would think was a true socialist program. But it is not. Social Security is not paid for, or was never meant to be paid for, by the American taxpayer. Social Security was meant to be paid for by the individual paying into a Social Security account, which is what their Social Security number is. That is actually their personal Social Security account. Okay? It's like a bank account, except for the government takes care of it for you. Okay? So it's not a tax. It's actually like you taking $2 out of your paycheck each month and sticking it into a bank account and not being allowed to use it until you turn a certain age. Now, Social Security would have been fine to take care of all the retired way into the future, if it wasn't for the changes to the program from when Roosevelt implemented it. Social Security has changed to where it became part of a welfare program and put into the welfare program. This way the government could borrow from it. And they have. They have big time for wars and other things. Okay? And they never paid it back. Now, if the government would pay Social Security back what they borrowed, we would have a Social Security program that is sufficient for the elderly and the disabled and those that are coming up. But because the government hasn't done that, we don't. Part of what keeps us afloat is the fact that we have immigration. When the immigrants come to this country, they have to apply for a Social Security card. When they get that Social Security card makes it so that they're paying Social Security money. Even undocumented people with a fake Social Security card has to pay that Social Security into the system. Now, immigrants do not get to withdraw from Social Security. When they retire, they don't get that benefit. They have to pay into it, but they don't get that benefit. That benefit is meant for citizens, not for immigrants. And a fake Social Security card will not pass scrutiny of the federal government. Now, an employer may choose to allow that fake Social Security card to work because it benefits him. He gets to hire that immigrant at a lower pay to keep it quiet. Okay? But I'm banking you 100% that employer knows that card is not legitimate. He's done his checks. And he's looked at the immigrant and said, no, this isn't legitimate. Now, normally, I pay my workers $7.50 an hour. But you got an illegitimate Social Security card here. So I think I'm going to pay you $6.50. How's that sound? Now, this immigrant is wanting to make money to be able to survive here so that he can send the money home to help his family survive in a country like Argentina or some other country where they're having troubles growing food. So he's trying to help his family survive. He's not going to turn it down. That's also why a lot of times you find immigrants living in the lowest income apartments, lowest slumlords, and there's 2, 3, 4, 5 families living in one apartment that may be nothing more than a 2-bedroom apartment. Because that's the only way they can afford to live in an apartment and still be able to send money home to their families. But they're paying into Social Security. Now, as I said, Sweden has a socialist program too. All good democratic countries have socialistic programs as well as capitalism. In our country, the capitalism benefits the business, that the owner of the business. It does not have to pay 50% of its income to the leader of a country. Now, should they be paying more taxes the way their workers do? Yes, they should. Especially with the way they pay their workers and how much profit they're making. Now, subsidies are also food stamps. That benefits the poor. That's a socialist program. But subsidies are also benefiting the oil company, who is making record profits off of their capitalistic business. Because not only are they getting the subsidies to lower the cost of gas to the population, but on top of that, they're also gouging that population. And that's wrong. And that's where it comes in that there should be regulations. Companies should not be allowed to cheat their customers. That does not make our country bad because we regulate corporations so that they cannot cheat or abuse their workers or their customers. That just holds that capitalistic company to account for their actions and how they treat their workers and their customers. Now, the Republicans right now are out there trying to make you afraid of socialistic programs. And most of you are out there saying you don't want the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, taken away. You want it fixed. Some of you are, oh, it's a socialist program. We're scared of it. We're scared of it. The Republicans are telling us to be scared of it. Because some of those Republicans want an authoritarian system. They want a system where it's either a banana republic where they can cheat the voter with voter suppression, severe gerrymandering, doing what Arizona and Georgia wants to do, to where they say, well, we don't like the outcome of the election, so we are going to overturn it. Oh, you Republicans in the primary, you voted for this guy? We don't want him. We didn't endorse him. So we're overturning your election and we're putting this guy in place. So don't be going around saying, oh yeah, that'd be great. We'd always have a Republican. You might not always have the Republican you wanted. Is that what you want? Do you really want an authoritarian country? Because that's what they're working on. They don't care about your vote. They just care if they win. And it doesn't matter how they win. They will make you afraid of the invisible boogeyman. They will take your right to vote away. They will make false claims about elections. And as 2020 has proven, they have graduated to the point that they will do an insurrection to try and stop an election of a free and fair election so that they can win, so that they can keep who they want in office, not who the majority of the people want in the office. So why are you afraid of socialist programs? Did you know the road you drive in is part of a socialist program? Did you know that the Secret Service that protected Trump the whole time he was in office and that was having to pay for golf courses to Trump when he was down at Mar-a-Lago most of his term in office, are paid by a socialist program? All good democratic nations have a combination of socialist and capitalistic programs. Just like Sweden does. Sweden just does it better than some countries do. They do it better than America does. That's the only difference. But they are a democratic country. They are a democratic republic. America is supposed to be a democratic republic. But we're not. We truly aren't. We're not fully 100% democratic republic. I would say we are a democratic banana republic. Because the majority of our people do not choose the leader of our country. We choose who is going to represent us at the White House and vote in our place by what candidate we vote for. When Trump was running in 2020, the majority of the nation voted for Biden. Therefore, the majority of the electorates sent to the White House were Biden electors. Now, during 2016, however, the majority of the nation voted for Hillary. But somehow and for some reason, the majority of the people who went to the White House were for Trump. And so those people stole the majority of the citizens' votes and voted for Trump instead of for Hillary. And that's how Trump won. If it hadn't been for that, if our nation was truly 100% a democratic nation, then in 2016, yes, Hillary would have been our president. 2020, Biden is our president. And the Republicans are out there making you afraid of a socialist country because they know that the Democrats are looking to implement programs that benefit everybody. And so now they're making you afraid of that. They're looking to implement medical programs that cover everybody, leaving nobody to go bankrupt to pay for their medical treatment. That does not make them a dictatorship or authoritarianism. That makes them a political party that are trying to do the best for all the citizens of the nation. They're trying to cut prescription drugs that Republicans voted against. They're trying to help you pay for your medical bills that Republicans voted against. Because you see, these programs Democrats are trying to implement are meant to benefit everybody in the nation. To give the lower class a chance. And the Republicans can't have that because they want a system that benefits them and keeps them in office indefinitely. No matter how much they've got to make you fear, no matter how much they got to cheat, no matter how many people's votes they've got to take away. And the more of us out there who have said, we've had enough, that get out and vote, and don't let their voter suppression and their fear-mongering for socialist programs chase you off, the less their tactics will work. But then you gotta watch it, because the more desperate they will get. And 2020 should be proof of that. Because we had record turnouts for the Democrat in 2020. And every Republican state right now is passing more and more voter suppression laws and unconstitutional voter laws. Every state in the United States, when you go to register to vote, you've got to show an ID. Now, when I went to do my vote, I had to walk in there, and I did early voting. I had to walk in, had to write out and sign a absentee voter request form. Put it together properly. Hand them my ID, at which time they went back to their computer to check my ID with the national database to make sure my ID was legitimate with the federal government. Once they seen my ID was legitimate with the federal government, I was allowed to get my ballot and cast my vote. And every state in the United States requests that. But some states are now wanting you to pay to buy a separate ID that is meant for voting alone. That, my dear, is akin to a poll tax. That is illegal. Because some people can't afford to pay for that. And those things are usually like $20 a pop, and they'll make them renewable every 4 years. That means before every presidential election, you will have to come up with $20 to renew that voter ID. Some people don't have that money, especially the homeless. And the homeless should still have a right to vote. They are citizens of our United States of America. And as long as they have a legal, valid ID, either in the form of a state ID or a driver's license, they should be allowed to go down to their poll and vote. But they're not in states that have passed laws where they have to pay extra for a special ID. And that's not right. So socialism. Why is it we should be afraid of that and not more afraid of authoritarianism or a banana republic? Because socialism is not synonymous with dictatorship or authoritarian. It is synonymous with an economic system that many, if not most countries, implement. Capitalism is not inherently good. It depends on the political system that is in place that implements that capitalism to benefit the nation or to benefit the leadership. So stop being afraid of it. The thing and the only thing you should be afraid of is whether or not the politicians you're looking at have authoritarianism inclinations. And from 2016, actually from long before 2016, the Republicans have shown a deep inclination to authoritarianism. It just came to a crescendo when the insurrection on the White House happened. But they've had that inclination for a long time. It started before Obama was elected. It ramped up even higher once Obama was elected. And then when Trump was elected, they had all the authoritarianism they wanted. They could block any and every bill they wanted to from the Democrats to make the Democrats look like they were doing nothing. When in fact, they were passing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bills through the House when they had the majority. But because the Senate was in the majority and it had the supermajority, meaning they could block filibusters, they were allowed to block any and all bills Democrats brought forward. They could refuse to put it on the floor altogether, which they frequently did. The majority of Democratic bills didn't even make it to the floor. They had background checks for guns wrote up as a bill years ago. But while the Republicans had the majority, they refused to even put it on the floor. You know, a lot of the stuff most of the American public is hollering for, a lot of that stuff the Democrats made a bill for. But the Republicans refused to put it on the floor. And since then, the Democrats have the majority, but they don't have the super majority. So when the Democrats have re-brought these bills up, the Republicans have filibustered them. And that's why they don't get passed. They've had bills up that would help with the inflation. Several of them. One of them happened to get passed. One. I think they've had 3 or 4 of them that could have gotten passed. But one got passed. And that's only because 13 Republicans, I think it was, 13 or 19 Republicans, crossed party line and voted for it. Now there's 50 Republicans in the Senate. So less than half of the Republicans pass party lines to give you guys that break. To give the working class that break. Okay? But every single Republican who benefited from that bill with money to their state, including DeSantis, are praising themselves how they got that money for you. Now, when the Republicans had the supermajority, they were more interested in passing tax breaks that benefited the rich most and trickled down to nothing when it came to the poor. Saying, oh, it's a trickle-down theory. But the rich didn't trickle that money down. They went out and did a buyback spree. Buying back stock. Paying their CEOs more. Making more of a profit during a pandemic on top of that. While you were sitting there, and some of you were paying more in taxes than you ever had. Never had to pay into taxes ever. And all of a sudden, when that tax break came through, you're having to pay into taxes. And you're having to pay in more. Or you're getting absolutely nothing from that tax break. Or you got $1. And it didn't even pay for the deductions that Trump administration took away from you. But you're afraid of socialism. We've got socialism. But since Trump had been in office and the Republicans had that supermajority, our socialism is benefiting the rich and big corporations most. It's not benefiting the nation as a whole. And that, my dear, is authoritarianism. That is not a democracy. So on one hand, the Republicans want to make you afraid of socialism for programs that will benefit you, the little guy. But on the other hand, they want to push their own socialist programs for the big guy, the rich, and themselves. And you're afraid of socialism. How funny.